Welcome to the CQC video training series. This is a spot topic video on V2 device drivers. Device drivers, of course, are how CQC talks to the devices that you want it to control. And if you've gone through any of the other videos, you probably have seen these in various ways. And for about, I guess, almost a decade, we really didn't have any sort of standardization for device drivers. Each driver writer was basically allowed to be as device specific as he chose, and that was typically what would be the case, that they would really very much just follow the contours of the device's way of naming things and doing things. And over time, it became clear that this was really not optimal, that in order for us to provide more helper tools, we had to have a better understanding of what the device drivers were doing. And in order for that to be the case, we had to have some sort of standardization of these drivers. So I believe it was in version 4.4, we began the very first early efforts in this area, and it picked up a lot in 4.5, and by now it's quite a mature system. And what we decided was that it really isn't practical to try to model an entire device, because in many cases a device might be composed of really two different devices in one box or even more. So it was difficult to come up with a set of overall device driver level standards. So what we decided to do was to define device classes, which are more fractional. They only define specific types of functionality that are not device specific. And a device driver can then be composed of one or more of these device classes that it implements. So let's look at one here, and it would probably make more sense. If we go to devices here, and there's a good number of devices installed, let's look at the security driver. And if we double click that, we get the general purpose driver spelunking tool, which just lets us manually poke around inside the driver. And if you'll notice that there are certain fields, like this one does not have it, and this one does. It has a prefix on it, which is separated by a pound sign and then the rest of the field name. And this is a V2 field, and this one is not. It is certainly the case that any particular device driver may still have non-V2 fields, because it may still have very device-specific functionality that it wants to expose. What's important is that for any functionality that falls within one of the V2 device classes, that it be exposed through those device class interfaces. So that part of the functionality can be generally understood by magic tools and so forth. And it's not just a matter of our being able to create tools that understand these drivers. It also means that there's more ability to replace the device with another one without there being any ill effects and so forth. And also to be able to create logic and user interfaces that will work for any number of devices. So if you look at this one here, it is MOT and then the pound sign. And this one means that it is a motion field. And down here we have security fields. And they also have standards beyond just the prefix. In this case, in the security device class, some of them begin with area underscore and some begin with zone underscore to differentiate area related fields and zone related fields. And each device class defines these field naming conventions. And if we were to look at another one here, let's say a media renderer. In this case, we see aud, which means audio, and that handles things like volume and mute, and then media render, which are related to media rendering. And so it provides things like metadata and the like. And then there are transport related fields here and power related fields. So all of these are fractional bits of functionality that any particular device can implement. And this is a pretty powerful scheme, because it also means that when you want to set up, say, a volume and mute control part of a user interface, it doesn't have to be the same device that is basically doing the playback necessarily. So you can pull fractional bits of individual devices out and target them with user interfaces and user logic, and you can switch that around without having to be concerned with which particular device it is coming from. And of course, one of the next questions would be, how do I know what these things are and how to use them? And we have down here in the help section, if you go to help, docs, and there's a V2 classes section. If you double click that, that will run your browser and open up the help for that. And you can see here all of the existing device classes. And of course, this is not comprehensive. There are devices that will fall completely outside of any of these, and that's okay, because it just means that we haven't gotten around to coming up with a standard for them, And in some cases, maybe we never will because there's just not enough standardization to make it practical. We can define standards all we want, but if the actual practical existing devices out there are so ill-defined that it's impossible to really make them fit into those standards, it is of little use. So when you pick one of these, you'll see that it describes the device class, and it provides information about the fields that that device class provides or defines. So you will be able to expect that any device driver that implements this particular device class will implement these fields, and they will work as they are described here. So when you look at the actual device driver documentation, it won't actually replicate all of these device class field definitions. It will just reference the fact that this driver implements audio, it implements AV processor, and it implements power. And you can just go look at the device class documentation to find out exactly what that implies. The device driver itself will also list any non-V2 fields that are specific to it that it implements. So it still has to be responsible for documenting that stuff. So basically that's it. V2 device classes are standardized, and that has many advantages. So use V2 enabled drivers where they are available. In many cases, you'll see that there is a driver that is for the same device, and there's a V1 driver and a V2 driver because we have to keep the old one around for backwards compatibility. But always choose the V2 driver if you can, because it's just a smarter move. It'll be more flexible in the future, and it'll be easier for you to replace a device without having to go back and do major reconstructive surgery on all of your user logic and interfaces. So there it is, and we'll see you in the next video.